The Rebel 1100 is such a sleek, sexy bike until you get to the back end and you see this dingle-dongle of a license plate Fender thing hanging off the back, ruining the looks of it. Fear not, today we're fixing all that with a Burly brand Fender Eliminator kit.
Perfect.
Welcome back to Life of Birch. I'm Birch, and before we get started, make sure to go ahead and subscribe if this is your first time finding the channel. Obviously, you're interested in the Rebel 1100, and I have tons of content with mine that you don't want to miss out on. All right, now let's just jump straight into it. Today, we are reviewing and installing the Burly brand Fender Eliminator kit for my Rebel 1100. The install should be pretty straightforward, but I'm not entirely sure because it didn't come with instructions, and I am violently hungover from staying up too late, slamming wine, and making cookies with my girlfriend. So fingers crossed this goes as simply as I think it's going to. First things first, let's pop the box open and see what we're working with. Just look at how nice it looks. Just kidding, that's obviously the packaging. Terrible hangover joke. All right, so everything's packaged up real nice and safe. First thing you're gonna see right here is the license plate frame. So that looks real nice. You can tell it's super heavy duty, made out of metal. No cheap plastic stuff going on here. Has the Burly brand insignia, or whatever you would consider Burly brand logo right there. Set that to the side. And then the next part that we have is the actual license plate holder itself. So this is super high quality as well. Once again, solid metal. You can see it has their little like slash cut that Burly brand is known for. That looks really good. This will attach right here to the new little fender piece that I'll show you in a second. And then the license plate frame goes right over that. Both of them looking real sexy. Got the flat black going on. Love that. And then this is the main part right here. This is the actual fender piece that will replace the stock one. It'll make a lot more sense once we do the install, but essentially this goes up underneath the fender, and then this piece right here can attach as such, and then that way you don't have the big little dingle dongle thing hanging down. Once again, just looking at it, this is super high quality. The matte black finish on it looks really, really good. And you can see right here, this is where the turn signals slash brake light will attach. All right, so everything's looking super good so far. Now let's check out the turn signals. Those are in here. Pop them open, and you got one for each side, of course, and they are the bullet style. You can see it's like tapered at the end. These are metal. Again, they're not plastic. No cheaping out on this. They look really, really good. They're LED, and these will function as the turn signal as well as the running light and brake light. And then you look, and it has a little pigtail plugs, whatever they're considered right here, that will plug into the stock harness. Should be pretty simple plug and play installation, but again, I'm not entirely sure because all the other Burly brand parts had instructions and these do not, but we're gonna figure it out as we go. Now, these look really good, but just for full transparency's sake slash my nitpicking that you guys know I do on every install video, the only thing that I noticed with these is that right here, I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but it looks like the coating isn't quite as like heavy as it is throughout the rest of it. So you can kind of see some of the bare metal through there, but not a big deal because obviously it won't really be noticeable once it's on the bike. Other than that, it looks really, really good. And then of course you have your second one here wrapped up all nice like. This one doesn't have quite as much of the issue with the coating, and I don't even know if you guys will be able to tell it from the video. Really not a big deal, just you guys know how nitpicky I am. And then you got your two bolts right here attached to the box. Not entirely sure what these are for, but I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go. And then inside the box, we have another bag of nuts and bolts and everything. Once again, not entirely sure what they go to, but I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go. Let's go ahead and get it thrown on. So we'll have to take the top part of the fender off in order to do this install. And to get to that, we'll have to take the saddlebags and the backrest off. Most of you guys don't have these and you won't have to deal with that problem. So I'll save you the time and that's what most of you guys will be starting with. Now, it is worth noting that I left these fender bolts out just so that it's easier to put the saddlebags and backrest back on once I'm done, but these don't need to be taken off for the install. Now, the first step of getting this fender off is removing the bolts that hold it on. So we'll want to take this one off, and then there's one underneath the seat that we have to take off. Both of them will be removed with a 6mm Allen key. To get to the one under the seat, you just want to put your key in, push it in, turn it, you'll hear a pop, and you'll be able to pop the seat off to get to it. And they're off. Oh yeah, and you also want to pop these little like spacer washer things off both sides so they don't fall off and scratch anything. Then we're gonna come up underneath the fender here, and we're gonna remove these two bolts right here with a 5mm Allen key. And then it looks like we gotta remove this one right here as well with a 6mm. Sheesh. All right, so now that is loose and removed from the fender. Now to get this fender off, I'm realizing there's actually wires that run through it right here and right here. So we're gonna have to pop the battery tray off to get to those to disconnect them. To get the battery tray off, you have a push pin here and here that you'll need to use a Phillips head for. And then you have two of them down here. Now I had to take this out previously and totally strip the crap out of that one, so be really careful with these. All right, so with the tray out of the way, you can see that these wires connect here with some little like push connector things that you just pop out. And then the ones on the right-hand side attach right here, again, with just little push pin things that you pop out. Once we have wires 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disconnected, we should be able to slide them out and just pop this fender piece right off. Those are out. And those are out. A little bit difficult to get to, so if you don't have girly hands like mine, it might be a little bit more difficult, but pop them right out and we should be good. Now we're just gonna grab the sides of the fender and kind of shimmy it up. Pop it up in the front a little bit, and then shimmy it back. Being real careful not to scratch anything. We'll feed these through here to make it easier. And then we'll probably just feed them right down through here so they're totally out of the way. And, oop, it's caught on that. I'm gonna pull these wires through to give the tail light here more room to get out of our frickin' way. And with that out of the way, it should hopefully slide right back. There we go. All right, now we're just gonna take this whole thing and pull the wires through and get it out of the way. But I am a little bit confused now, and I'll show you why in just a second. All right, now here is what I'm confused by. The kit is marketed as having everything for direct bolt-on replacement, but these wires have these plugs on the end here, and then it's just a wire that goes straight back to the lights here. Now the lights that come with the kit have these little, I forget what they're called, like bullet adapters or whatever, right here, as if they're supposed to plug into something. So I assume, since it said it was a direct bolt-on kit, that these would plug directly into somewhere along this line here. But they don't, from what I can tell, because there's nowhere here where they would disconnect. And that's fine and dandy, but I would assume that if it was a direct bolt-on kit, that the kit would come with the receivers for those, or at least say that somewhere along the line you have to cut these wires to your stock lights. Now I'm not sure if that's the case or not, so I'm gonna phone a friend and shoot a text to Josh at Burly brand to figure out if that is what we need to do before I start cutting into a perfectly good stock setup. But while we're waiting on a response for that, let's go ahead and throw this piece on right here, which will replace this piece right here. So this is what I was saying you'd have kind of a better idea of. This piece hangs down at the end to attach all of the stock stuff, and the new one you can see has like the clean cut off there, so it'll sit flush with the fender. So to take this off, all we should have to do is undo these bolts right here on each side, and it looks to be about an 8mm. Yep. Boom. So the new bracket will sit right in here like that. There is a bit of play, like some room between the fender and the new bracket. So I'm assuming that that's what these washers are for. I'm assuming that one of these washers will go in between the fender bracket and the new bracket, if that makes sense. And I'm also gonna assume that we're gonna be using the slightly shorter bolts out of the 8 that we got. They're the same exact thread, it's just that these happen to be a little bit shorter. So I'm gonna assume we're using these so that they don't come close to the tire. So essentially we'll be taking the bracket, putting it in there with a washer between this and this, and then we'll be sliding one of the shorter bolts through and using one of these nuts to attach it. So we'll put the washer there and have the bolt ready, put it in place and put the bolt through, and then put the nut on loosely just to keep that in place. And then we'll go to the right side, bring it up into place, slip the washer in there, or it'll fall. Try that again with my finger underneath it to hold it. Okay. Dude, for real? Dude, I'm getting sick of this. Greetings from future Birch. I'll save you guys the agony of having to watch me drop those washers dozens of times and seriously start to lose my patience. I'm gonna lose my on these little washers. But the washers were seriously a pain in the ass, and the worst part of this, which really got me thinking, they couldn't have just made this wider so that it lines up without having to put washers in there? But a few deep breaths and several cuss words later, I ended up getting it to work, and I think the secret to it is that I kind of put the washer in between the fender and the new bracket and sandwiched it so that it had like some tension on it, lined up the washer with the new bracket and slid it down into place with the bolt waiting to kind of catch it and line up. And eventually, after a whole bunch of luck, I ended up getting it. Let's go, dude. That was pure luck. I don't know how I did it. Let's go. So be prepared for this to be obnoxious, and I hope you have more patience than I did. Now we can finally tighten it down. To tighten it down, we'll just need a 4mm Allen key for the outside and then a 10mm for the inside. and we're good to go. All right, now that that's on, I kind of want to slide the fender into place just to see what it'll look like once it's done. So here's a rough idea of what it's going to look like. Sorry, I'm using my phone light. We ran out of daylight, but you can see it's not going to hang down past the fender at all. The new tail lights will attach right here, and so far it's looking pretty good. One of my concerns though is that you can see that it's definitely gotten a little bit scratched from the stock tail light, so I'm worried that you might be able to see that. I can't tell if it's an actual scratch or just like buildup of dirt, so we'll get that all cleaned up before we finish putting it together. I just don't want any scratches to show, but I guess we'll see once the finished product is all put together. Definitely looking good, but it does seem like we're gonna have to get some female connectors for those wires to plug those into. So I gotta head out to the auto parts store, grab some connectors to go with these. We'll come back, cut these wires to attach it, and then after that, we should just have to put it all back together. Not to make it sound too easy. Knock on wood. And we are back at it, ladies and gentlemen. We have the wiring schematic and we're ready to finish this up. Shout out to Josh from Burly Brands for sending me the wiring schematic, so we're good to go. Apparently the kit was supposed to come with instructions, but it didn't, so he sent that over to me. I think a few other people have gotten this kit without instructions also, so if you need those, I'll put his email right here so you can reach out and grab the instructions, even though I don't know why you need them because you're watching this video, but still. But he has assured me that all the kits from here on out will have the instructions, so that's good news. And speaking of good news, according to the instructions, I've done everything right so far. Everything that I did to put this little piece on is correct as far as the right bolts and washers and everything like that, so that's awesome. But the bad news is that the turn signals are not plug and play, just as I suspected. And not only are they not plug and play, but these little male adapter things here aren't even used. We're gonna have to cut these off, solder these wires onto the stock wires once we cut those, and then we'll have to shrink wrap them. So I got my heat gun and shrink wrap. I don't want to keep jinxing this, but now that we have the instructions and the wiring schematic, this should be pretty simple to finish up. Of course, given our track record with this so far, I wouldn't be surprised if something popped up along the way, but fingers crossed, we should be good to go. Let's start getting into the wiring. So this is the scary part, cutting the stock wires. Now I have them kind of laid out the way that they were on the Fender originally, so I know which one goes on which side, and I have everything in order. Everything is color coded, so you should be able to tell what's what looking at the wiring diagram, but I wanted to keep it like this just to make sure that everything's nice and straight. On the left side, your green and orange is going to be your left turn signal. Also on the left side, you have two green wires and a brown wire. That's going to be for your running light and brake light. This little one sitting off by itself, the solid green one, we won't need. We'll just need to use the yellow and green striped one right here. Then on the right hand side, this one right here is blue and green. That's your right turn signal. And then this green and brown one on the right hand side is actually for your tag light, which I'm realizing the new kit does not have any tag lights. So I went ahead and bought some LED tag lights off Amazon that we're going to wire that into. And now the scary part, we're just going to cut them off, and we're going to cut them as close to this as we can to make sure we have enough wire for everything. No turning back. Or maybe there is. Oh God, the anxiety. Now we got to cut the male connectors off of both of the turn signals. And again, we're going to want to cut it as close to the end as possible so we leave as much wire to work with as we can. With the male connectors cut off of all four of them on each of the turn signals, you just want to strip the end to expose the wire, like so. So you'll want to do that for each of the 8 wires on the turn signals, and then of course for each of the wires that goes under the seat. And for those, you'll probably have to kind of like peel this stuff back a little bit to expose the wires and then strip them, if that makes sense. All right, so we got all the wires stripped, and they should look a little something like this. This is obviously the turn signal. You can see how all those are stripped. And this is kind of what the stock wires should look like. You can see it's stripped, and then I also cut back the tubing around it to leave some space for the wires. And this one in particular is actually the tail light / brake light wire that I was talking about. So we're going to use the green and yellow wire, but we're not going to need the solid green wire. So I'm just going to tuck it down into there out of the way so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Now with all the wires stripped, we're going to go ahead and throw on the turn signals for a test fit, and also because we'll have to wire them up with the turn signals on the bike. And the reason for that is because the red and white wires on each side are actually going to wire together and go into the same stock wire, if that makes sense. So there wouldn't be any way to feed them through. It'll probably make a lot more sense once we get it wired and I show you. So to put the turn signals on, you just thread off that nut right there, put everything through that hole, slide the nut on the back, and tighten it down. All right, so with the lights mounted up, you're starting to get a better idea of what the finished product's gonna look like, and I am super stoked to see it because it's looking better and better as we go. Now, the first thing we're gonna do is wire up the turn signal function on each side, and the reason we're doing that is because they just kind of mind their own business off on the side by themselves, whereas the white and red wires will have to be put together and then into another wire. So these will be easy to do. We'll wire those in and then check it out to make sure it works. For the right side, we're gonna wire the yellow into the blue and the black into the green, and then for the right side, we'll wire this yellow into that orange, orange, and this side's black into this side's green. So you can see on the right side, we have the yellow wired to the blue, the black wired to the green. It's just twisted together to test it out. It's not like actually soldered yet. We just want to make sure that the turn signals work. And then on the left side, we have the orange to yellow and the green to black. Same thing, just twisted together to test it out. And then all the wires are plugged in up at the front. The left side turn signals plug into the gray plug, and the right side turn signals plug into the black plug on the right side. Now we just got to turn the bike on, test out the turn signals, and make sure those work. Right side, nice. Left side, and nice. So now that we know that the turn signal function works, we're going to test out the running light and brake light function. So for that, we're going to wire both of the red wires together and both of the white wires together. The reds will go into the green wire from the left side, and the whites will go into the brown wire. So we got everything twisted together there, and then we ran it up and plugged it in. It plugs in at the black plug on the left side, and now let's test it out to make sure that the running light and brake light function works. All right, running lights are good. And the brake lights are good. Hell yes. Now that we've confirmed that everything's wired up properly and works the way that it's meant to, we'll go ahead and tidy up all the wires, get the wires soldered and heat wrapped, and then go ahead and put the rear fender on. Now you may remember earlier I was talking about how I got these tag lights and how I was gonna wire them into the stock tag light wire. We're gonna wait to do that because these actually have a wire that goes through the license plate. So once we get the license plate on, then we'll wire that up. So I did jinx it again. As it turns out, I did not have any of my soldering stuff here. I thought it was in my toolkit, but it's actually at my house. So I ended up just using these butt connectors. Now these are actually the weatherproof butt connectors, so they're really nice. All you do is stick one wire in each end, crimp it down right in the middle there with one of the crimper tool thingy things, and then just hit it with the heat gun. So essentially it starts off the size of this one right here. You can see how like open that is, but then when you run the heat gun along the whole thing, it melts down to this size or shrinks down to this size and forms a weather tight seal with the wire. So we're gonna do that for each of the wires, and then I'll check back in once I have it all tidied up. All right, so you can see that we hit all of the butt connectors with the heat gun, so everything's all nice and sealed up and weatherproof. Now what I'm gonna do is wrap everything in electrical tape just to kind of clean everything up and keep it sectioned off. And this is the final result. You can tell it's not like the prettiest tape job ever, but it definitely makes it look a lot better and cleaner than the multicolor wires everywhere and everything like that. So I pretty much just wrapped electrical tape around it, and you can see that this is for the left turn signal, this is the right turn signal, and then this is the running light and brake light. So now the plan is to kind of bunch it up right there as clean as I can, zip tie it all together so it stays in place, and then run the lines up there. All right, so you can see I got everything bundled up nice and clean there, and then I held everything in place with a zip tie here and a zip tie here. Everything's held in place real nice and secure, and these will not get in the way of mounting the license plate here. Then on each side, I ran the wires up through here the way that they were from stock. Now the only thing I'm realizing is that I might have cut the wires a little bit too long because we have all this extra up here, so hopefully there's a way to tuck it in there. If not, you guys will learn from my mistake and cut yours shorter, but I think we should have room for those. And then if we come over to this side, you'll see that I plugged in the license plate wire here. So before I get everything put together, I'm just going to test out the license plate lights over there to make sure that they work, and then I'll wire that up just kind of like loosely down there to make sure that that'll fit, and then we'll get everything put together, and of course the lights will have to go on at the end. All right, so we got our $7 Amazon tag lights. We use these exact ones on the Grom and the FC07, so we know they're good quality already. We just got to test to make sure that these work. So we're just going to touch them on here to make sure that we're good to go. The green is the ground, the brown is power, and we got some light flickering on that one, so we're good to go with that one. And we got light from that one also, so we're good to go. Now we're gonna run the tag light wire down the right side like it was before, and we're just gonna kind of estimate how much we'll need to hang out in order to install those after the fender's on. And again, this isn't something you have to do. It doesn't even come with the kit. I just want to have tag lights so the cops don't bother me. And if you wanna do it, I'll post a link to those lights in the description. All right, so here's where it finally starts coming together. Yes, I'm wearing gloves because it's time to put the fender on and I don't wanna get fingerprints all over it. We already wiped it down to get all the stuff off of it, and as I mentioned before, I was afraid there might be some scratches, and after getting everything off, there are indeed some scratches on it. The stock taillight assembly scratched it. Hopefully that won't be super visible. I guess we'll see. So essentially all I had to do to get to this step was unplug all of the wires again, because I'll have to fish back through the little eyelets in the back of the fender, and then we'll just put the fender on the exact opposite way of how we took it off, if that made sense. It's the same process, we're just doing it in reverse. So we'll fish the wires through the little eyelets there, push those through and pull. Same thing on the other side, and then we just gotta slide it in and pop it back in place. So yeah, I guess the wires have to go underneath this little tube thing, huh? And by tube thing, I mean the frame. I can't even talk, I'm so tired. Continue pulling the wires through as you slide the fender forward. Line up the little bolt thing. and push it into place. That is looking so good. I'm so excited, dude. Oh my gosh. It looks so much cleaner without that big thing hanging off the back end. All right, so here we have the 2 tag wires that we left in place. Like I said, after we installed this, we'll put the tag lights on. So for this, it'll slide up behind the bracket that we already installed, and then we'll come with these 2 short little bolts with a 5mm Allen key and attach it. Oh yeah. All right, so now it's time to get the license plate mounted up. Normally you just go ahead, put the license plate, then the frame, and use the 4 nuts and bolts that came with the kit. But because we have the tag lights, we're just gonna use those since they actually act as a nut and bolt to hold it on as well. Now, we're not gonna be using the plate frame. As much as I like it, I'm realizing it just wouldn't make sense to for my application. And the reason being that the plate frame covers just enough of the registration stickers that it would be a super pain in the butt to switch the stickers out when you got new ones, simply because of this. If you just had to take off the nuts and bolts, that's one thing, but with this I don't want to have long wires behind it, and unless I had long wires it would be really hard to do because it's hard to get that off in order to do it, if that made sense. I don't know, I'm tired and delusional. Point being, we're not gonna use that unfortunately, so we're gonna put that up, put the lights through, and then get them wired up. And we have functional tag lights. She is all together and ready to rock. This looks so good and so much cleaner than what was on there from the factory. I just cannot get over how good this looks, and honestly how overall easy it was to do once I had instructions and any clue what I was doing. As you can see, we have everything all wired in already, got everything plugged back in, and it is smooth sailing and ready to go back together. So like I said, up here there's a bunch of like extra wire, and I can't remember how much wire there was before, but hopefully there's enough room to tuck all that in. And when you go to plug everything back in, the brown and green wire goes in the black plug, the orange and green wire goes into the gray plug, and then on the right side you have the black plug for the green and blue wire, and then you have the white plug for the brown and green wire. So we're gonna go ahead and get all those wires tucked in there, put the battery tray back in, put the spacers and bolts to hold the fender on, put the seat on, and then we should be done. She's finally done and put back together and looking so good. This is the sleek and sexy Rebel I was talking about at the beginning. I mean, just look at how nice and clean that looks. Like, I literally cannot even picture this monstrosity on it. What were you thinking, Honda? This looks so much better. And then I would like to clean up the wiring of the tag lights at some point. If you come over here, you can see I just did the same exact stuff I did with the other wires. I used like the heat wrap stuff and then wrapped it with electrical tape right there and kind of tucked it up in a way, but you still have like the red and black wires there. Not that that's really a concern because that doesn't even come with the kit. That's only if you want to add the tag lights. But yeah, I'm stoked. I mean, just look at the bike now. It looks so good. Back end's cleaned up. Totally worth the exhaustion that I'm sure you can hear in my voice right now. And there you have it. The Burly brand license plate kit / Fender Delete kit is on the bike and looking so good. I did encounter a few issues with the install, as you guys saw, but needless to say, after watching this video, hopefully you guys won't encounter those same issues, especially since your kit will actually have instructions, whereas mine didn't, and I was just kind of making it up as I went. Overall, I'm super stoked on it. The only thing I am disappointed by is the fact that it was labeled as a plug-and-play kit, and it was obviously anything but a plug-and-play kit. But rest assured, I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to electrical work, so if I can do it, you can do it. And of course, if you go to tackle the project yourself and come across any problems and you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll try my best to respond and help you out. But before I get out of here, we do have one more thing I gotta do. Oh yes, nothing like a cold one after a long install. Shout out to the Burly brand pegs for opening the beer for me. Are you kidding me? Maybe that was my sign to go home and go to bed instead of editing. But anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much to all the Patreon members for making this garage space possible. You guys are truly the best. And if you guys want to join Patreon as well, check out patreon.com/lifeofburch if you want to support the channel in a bigger and better way. And other than that, I'm getting out of here. Love you guys. Peace.